So, hey, back again. Welcome to the stream. So today we're gonna continue on where we left off last in the last stream. So basically, we're gonna be using. This is what we had so far. So we had our users view where we have a list of each user, and when you click on it, you can see we get to their a detail screen which show the user detail information. We have some information for them here, and we have a section posts that this user has made. And then we have another section for the about section. If you want to see how we kind of built this, just check the previous stream and you'll see that. So today what we're going to work on is pretty much adding in comments for posts that we have here. So basically we want to make it that when we click on this post, we can see a sheet come up and you see a list of all the comments for that link to that post. So to do that, we're going to use a JSONPlaceholder API. The JSONPlaceholder API, you can just go to, again, I'll add it in the description, but it's JSONPlaceholder.typecode.com. And we're going to use the comments resource. But since we want to get it based on the post, the comments for each post, we have to do it a bit different. We have to use code. We'll have to scroll down to roots. And then our endpoint is going to end up looking something like this. The post one.comments. And the one is representing like the user's ID. So we want to get all the comments. No, sorry, the one is representing the post ID. So we want to get all the posts, all the comments for that are linked to that specific post. So you see here, if we look at the endpoint, you see here we're using one, and then we have comments here. And then in all of these, you notice that the post ID is one for all of them. So we're getting all those comments. Pretty much we're going to be using this API. So let's just copy this for now. Let's open back Xcode. And as I said, what you want to do is that basically make it that for each post, whenever we click any of these posts, we see a modal pops up and it shows each post, each comment for that post. So let's work on building out all right, first we did copy the endpoint, so let's just go over to services or service layer, or pretty much our endpoints are. And we're gonna have to add a new case. So this is our endpoints case. If you want to see how we built this out, just again check the previous stream. And we're gonna add a case for comments by post ID. And then we're gonna have it accept a string, and that's pretty much gonna be the post ID. We know which comments to get. And then we're gonna update our switch our variable here and add a case for comments by post ID. And let's give this a name, post ID. I'll change this to a capital D to just consistent. Get rid of this. And then we're just gonna return. Exit that. We're gonna paste that there. Pretty much the endpoint that we had, but for the one, we want this to be based on whatever post ID we're passing in. So we're gonna get rid of that. And instead, we're gonna replace that with a post ID. Now our endpoint has this URL able to be built. What we need to do is actually start using this. So if we jump back to our services, you see we'll have to follow the same method process that we were doing, where we're basically having we're using a protocol and we're having a class conform to that protocol. So in this case, we're using protocol user services as a protocol, and then we have a class conforming to it, user services. More detail about this, just check the previous streams. And again, we're using Swift concurrency. So we're gonna add in a new function though, and this one is to fetch comments. And this is gonna take a endpoint to endpoints. And it's gonna be a similar method where it's like async throws. The problem we have now is that we actually don't have a comments model, similar like to how we have a user model and we have a post model here. We need to create a comments model. Okay. Just to give this a way how we can keep track of this. Let's just call this, let's add a comment and say user model here. And then we add another comment here and let's say post model. Okay. Let's jump back for a second. And you see that we're getting an error here because in our user services input, because we added this new protocol, but we're not using inside the class that conforms to it. But what we're going to do instead is add this additional new function, which is fetch comments. And I'll go through this again. It's gonna be pretty much the same thing. We could have even used a generic in this case since it's pretty much using the same code, but for now, let's continue. I'll probably use our last stream just to clean up the code using generics and making some more improvements. All right, so the first thing we want to do is we want to be able to convert our, let's jump back to JSONPlaceholder API. So you want to be able to convert our data that we have here to an actual Swift model. So let's see if we can create a model in Swift to represent it. So similar to how we had a user model and a post model. And that way we can have our API actually return an array of comments. So let's jump back to post inside the models file. So it's pretty much, yeah, we go to the models file. Then below here, we'll add a comment. Is comment model. And then we're just gonna create it as a struct comment. And then again, we did this again, but be able to decode this data and convert it to our model, are pretty much just to convert the data that we're getting from placeholder to our Swift model. We have to add a conformance decodable using the decodable protocol. And we also have to add, and because we're going to be using it in a SwiftUI list view, we have to add an identifiable property too. And the only requirement for the identifiable property is that it has a parameter called ID. So what I like to do is first at least check if the response is going to actually give us an ID, which it does in this case. But usually if it doesn't, I would do something like say let ID equal UID. That pretty much just handles it for that scenario. So let's match our model, our comment model, to the data that we're going to get from the API. So we'll say let post ID, and that's an int. And then we'll say let ID, which is also an int. Let name, another string. Let email, another string. And then we have body. So we'll say let body, which is another string. Okay, so we can get rid of this example here since we already know the parameters that we're going to expecting. And now we can jump back to our services class. And let's update the protocol because now we have a model. We created a model that we can work with. So to have it return an array of comment. And then we're going to update our signature too in here. We're going to go through the same process. So the first thing is we have to convert our endpoint, which is a string right now, to a URL. What we could have did honestly is just have this return optional. So we could do something. Actually, let's save that for after. So we'll just convert it here. So we'll say guard let URL equal endpoint, no, URL. Cause remember it's still a string. I'll say endpoint URL string, hit that name. And then we'll have a case where we throw the error that we're expecting, sorry. So similar to here, so we'll just do the same thing, user service error dot invalid error. Let's just scroll down. So throw user service error invalid URL. And now once we get past that case, we will now have the URL. So now we can actually start by making API request using URL session. So to do this, we're gonna say first thing is this call can throw. So I remember if it can throw, let's wrap it inside a do catch. The do catch here. And then inside our do now, which is the successful case, if everything works, we'll say let data response equal URL session that shared that data task, and we're going to make sure we use the async version. We're using Swift concurrency for this, and we'll just pass in URL. Okay, and now we have okay, yeah, so it says try. We have to add a try here, and I think on 8. Okay, yeah, and await. Okay, now we need to check our response. So we get some data, which is pretty much the data from the API, this stuff, but we get it in a type called data. And we need to convert it to our comments array of comments. But before we do that, we have to check if our response is good. We're gonna check if it's at 200 or 200 or 200 to 99. So to do this, we're gonna cast response to a HTTP URL response. So we'll say HTTP URL response, and we'll say response, and let's cast that to a HTTP URL response. Oh, actually, let's add a guard here. I forgot the guard. And then once we have the HTTP URL response, this will actually have a property on it called status code, which will have like what's the status code, where it's a 200 or 299 or whatever. So we want to check that it's between those values, the 200, 299. We're gonna check if it contains HTTP URL response.status code, and if it does contain a value between 200 to 299, then we know it's successful. Otherwise, we need to throw an error, and that would be an invalid status code, or whichever one, invalid status code. But if we do get past that from our guard statement, what we do now instead is start handling our data, start decoding our data. To do that, we're gonna say comments, and then we're gonna say JSONPlaceholder decode comment self, and then we're gonna pass in the data that we want to convert it from. So now we have an array of comments here, and we can just return these comments. And that case, this can fail to throw an error too, so let's do add a try there. Don't have to add an await because this isn't done asynchronously, so we're good there. And if we want to check, we can just hit comment on there. And you see that it throws, but there's no asynchronous tag there. So let's just jump back. And to do that, I pretty much just did command and then just clicked on the function. Kind of pushed me to the extra Apple's documentation for the decode function. And then for the catch block, we can just have it throw user service error custom, and then we're just going to use the error that we get from Apple. All right, so now we have pretty much set up our fetch comments block API service. Next thing we need to do is just pretty much just test it, and just to give us an idea again what we're working with, is this and run our code. Running, just taking forever. Okay, cool. All right. So again, this is our list of users. And then when you click on the user, you see their details screen. We see in one section we have their posts, all the posts that this user has made. In another section, we have their about, so some more detail about them. What we want to do is make it that for now is that whenever we click on any of these posts, we see a modal appears, and within this modal, what we're going to do is pretty much show a list of all the comments. So firstly, let's see if this API is actually working. So let's add in, let's maximize this. Then we're going to jump to user detail view here. And then we can pretty much just scroll down, and then we know we're going to have to add that data inside. Yeah, inside profile section view. And then profile section, whenever any, so this is this profile section view. Let's run the preview. Good. So this is pretty much the sections inside on the profile detail view, where it was the profile section and the about, the post section and the about section. So this is that data here. This is that view here. What we want to do is make it that whenever the user clicks any post, which this would be the post, what we should do is actually convert this to a subview. But whenever the user clicks on any of these posts, show them a modal. So what's going to happen now is pretty much I think what we're going to end up, just to handle this properly, is we're gonna add two things. So the first thing is profile section view is probably going to end up needing a view model. So we will need that. So well, let's build it out from the view first, and then we'll make the extra changes, moving it from the view to the view model. So we're going to need something like, say, a state, and then we'll call this show sheet view boolean. And set this to false. And we're just doing this just to see if this is going to work as expected. And then on each row inside the post list, the post, we're going to add a, could add it there. Pretty much you can add this almost anywhere for this portion, but for this I'm just gonna do I'm gonna add the sheet right here. So I'm just gonna say sheet is presented. I'm gonna pass it show sheet view, and then for some view now I'm gonna pass in, I just want to test to see that this is working. So let's say text, it's working. So let's run this again. I'll minimize. If we go to the detail view, and now we're on top of the post right here, or we click it, we notice nothing's happening. The reason for that is because we're not actually changing. We have set it up to handle showing the sheet, but we're not actually changing show sheet view to actually toggle anytime. So what we're gonna do now is add another modifier, and that's gonna be an on top gesture, and this will be show sheet view toggle. And now whenever we click it, it will toggle and show us a different screen. Let's run this again. If we go to the about section and we click any of these posts, we do see that now that we see a modal. Okay. Right. So that's the first step. So we don't have anything inside this view yet, but we know that the basic logic that we could use to actually show it. Another thing that we could do is actually use a navigation link if we wanted to, instead of using a modal, actually push to a different screen. We could do that too. But let's go with a sheet. We've used navigation link before, so let's go with a sheet instead. So again, one thing to mention is that we can break up this row. We can break up this view here and put it inside a separate SwiftUI view. That way it's more reusable and way better to read. Let's do that real quick. So we'll comment this. We'll copy this. Then in user detail view, we're gonna add a new folder, and this will be our row view for posts. Folder, post, row view. let's move this inside our profile section. That's really where it is. Then we're gonna add a new file, a SwiftUI file, and call this post row view. I'm gonna replace the text that we have there with just this. And because we're using post before, we have to actually introduce this to our view. So we'll say let post, that would be based on the post that we're gonna pass in. Our preview is gonna complain about that. So let's just add some stuff. Then let's just get rid of that and put in one here again. And that's just for the preview. This is pretty much gonna be the same thing, so don't gotta worry. So just copy the name here. We're gonna jump back to our profile section view. And instead of using this vstat just like that, we're gonna use a profile row view. We're gonna pass in the post. And then if we run this, we should see the same exact experience. So let's just do that. Okay. Yeah, so we see that whenever we click it. Yeah, so no, this is much easier to read, especially from you because you have me pretty much here. So I will update this now. So let's push this over one sec so it's not at the edge name, so we can tell the modifiers a little bit easier. All right. So now the next thing we need to do is one, we're gonna have to add a new model for profile section view. Or we could just keep it as this, honestly. So we'll add this. We'll have a on target share, on top gesture, etc. And this will do. What we could do is actually make show sheet view be actually a binding as well. But we'll stick with it for now. So we're gonna create our view here. And this is pretty much the comment section that we're gonna see when we go to the screen. So let's build it out here first, and then we will move it to a separate view in a second. So this would be this. Right. Then for our comments, what does our comment look like? It's just a post the ID, so it's just a name. I guess what the comment is, and then the body for what the comment is. And then we have the email. So let's have the email at the top, the name, and then the body below. So for each comment, we're gonna want something like this. We're gonna want a, yeah, this is getting too big. Let's actually just move this. Let's just actually move this to its own view. We're gonna call this comments view. Put that now. And then inside profile section again, we're gonna add a new folder, and this is gonna be just for comments. Comments view. And then we're gonna add a SwiftUI file. Call this comments view. And then inside here, replace this, just do Command V. And then the first thing is we're gonna have something like, we're gonna have the text. And let's just add it statically for now. So the first thing is your name. Followed by did I? Oh yeah, so that's actually, yeah, their email, then their name. and then whatever is in the body. All right, just paste this here. Really basic right now. We'll add on like more styling and so forth a little bit later on. But what we could do is make, at least for now, stop this, maximize this again. Let's make that this list style firstly will be different. So we'll make it a plain list style. And then we want to align all the elements in our comment view, deleting. And I want to make that this is bold. Add some padding below it. Bottom padding, pushing it separate. And then we have their name, title of the comment they made. This. They capitalize this. Better. And then for font weight, let's make this semi-bold. One more bottom padding below that. And then the rest can just be the body. We can also leave this pretty much as is. So we know the name of the person that commented, the title for the comment they made, and then the body. So we're doing this statically right now, but what we're gonna change is that it accepts, make it that comments view actually fetches all the comments based on the post ID. Okay, but this is just to build out some view right now. So let's jump back to profile section view, and inside the sheet, we're actually gonna say comments view. And let's just give it a run just to see what this is. Okay. Click this. Oh, it's toggling again. I think we have another navigation stack inside it. But we see the first comment, but basically what we want to do is see a list of all the comments coming down. And let's add like a title at the top that says comment so that we know that's what we're looking at. Let's add that. We could just do navigation title. Sure. Let's see if this comments. Let's run it again. I'm not sure if this will show just like this or if I need to add a navigation stack. So it needs me to add a navigation stack, it looks. Bro, this is not even the right one. I need to add this in comments view. Let's remove this and then jump to comments view. Then on its V stack, we're gonna add navigation title. Still iffy if this will work though, but let's see. As expected, it's kind of iffy. So what we're gonna do is, honestly, we could just put comments at the top here and this would work. So let me see. Although, but doing a navigation stack should work too. So let's just see if we can get that first. So we'll go up here. I'll say navigation stack. Do the opening braces there, then do the closing one. And let's run it again. And I think we'll be able to see the title here, even from the mode, since we wrapped it in a navigation stack. Okay, yeah. So we do see the title here, comments, as expected. Stick with this for now. And then I think I don't need to jump back file section. And then I think there's user detail view. So we might not need this navigation stack that's on top of user detail view, since users view actually does already have a navigation stack too. I think we added this for the previews. So let's see. View. So let's just get rid of this navigation stack. Then let's just get rid of this. Let's run again. Not sure why it just dips. That's so weird. While the presentation is in progress. Okay, anyways, so we'll see comments here just like this. All we want to do is instead of just showing the static data right here, we want to make it that whenever we go to the profile section, we actually make the API call and we load all the comments based on that post ID. So we need to then pass the post ID here to our comments model, our comments view. And to handle that better, let's give comments view a view model of its own. So we'll go to the comments folder. We're going to add a new file called comments view. So a Swift file and a SwiftUI file. Comments view model. Do the same thing, give it a name. Model, make it an observable object so that we can list it for whenever we actually get back the comments from the API. And to use our services, we have to add it as a dependency. That is user service. And then let's add an initializer for this. And because we don't want to have to initialize this each time, we'll also add like a default value. Nice. And then one thing we're going to need to is a publish variable. And this is what we're going to use to store the comments and pass it to the view so that we can show it. Okay. Pass this to the view so that. All right. And it's going to be an array of comments. Now we're going to actually create the function that we're going to use to call the API. So we'll say func and we'll say fetch comments. And then no, because remember our service function that uses fetch comments is an asynchronous function and it can also throw. So we have to mark our function with an async. And then for handling the throw, we just have to make sure we include it inside a do catch. All right, so the first thing we're going to do now is say self.comments. And then we're going to try await services and then do fetch comments. And for that, then we're going to update our endpoint. And for this, we need a post ID. And again, we need a post ID because the URL that we're using is like this. So type code /post. And we use the post ID to get all the comments for a particular. So we need a way how we can get this post ID. And remember, we get to the comments view screen by clicking on a post and then seeing all the comments for that post. What we could do is pass the post ID from this post or comments view model, and then the view model will pass it to the data that we need to the screen. So right now in our view model, we have no way how to get that post. So we have to add an additional property, and this is going to be a post property, or we could just do post ID, keep it simple. So let's do post ID and just have it be a string. And then we could post ID at the front, make it as a string, then say self post ID, call post ID, and then passing it in. And now this should be good. For now, we're not gonna really worry about error right now. We're just to print error. Really, what we want to see is the data behaving as expected? Are we getting the data back? So before I really show it in the view, let's do print comments, or better yet, dump comments. I remember we showed that the difference between print and dump is that dump will show it more in easier to read format, or a print will just kind of throw it at you. It will show it, but it's just not as easier to read. All right, so we're not calling this API anywhere, and where we want to actually call it is inside our comments view. So we have to introduce our comments view to this view model. We're going to do that by using a state object. Our view model, comments view model. We can actually initialize this. Since we gave services a default value, it should. Oh yeah, but it requires a post ID. So we actually need to go back to the other format. So we'll do comments. Okay. And let's update our preview too. So we'll just give it the ID of 1. Alright. Can get rid of this. Alright. So already you can see that inside our list we're showing this static data, but it's taking up a lot of space, and we want to switch this to be extracted to its own view. But we're going to pause on that for now and focus on just seeing if your data is giving us as expected. So we're going to add a task modifier here. And this is what we're going to use to call our API call. The view model.fetch comments. And we just want to see if the data is being decoded properly. Are we getting the data? So set some breakpoint. And we're going to run again. Oh, look like we hit that error. So we'll jump to here. Oh yeah, we have to update this to use this. So we'll say comments view model. The post, no, the post because it's post.id. And now if we, oh yeah, it still requires a, oh, this is an int. So let's comment this out. Let's that, and let's make it a string post ID, just that. And then by default, remember comments view model is used a default user services info. So we're initializing a new one. In this case, I kind of don't want to do that. I kind of want to keep this. I want to pass the same services that we had from our previous view. That's one way to do that. Problem is we'd have to update this right here. So it's looking more and more that profile section view is gonna need its own view model. But before we do that, we can do that in our cleanup in a few extra steps. Let's just check to see if we're actually getting the data for now. So let's run it again, and then we should hit that breakpoint, either be a success or an error. And if it is a success, we'll be able to see if we're actually getting the data as expected. So we don't need post. Post is working fine right now. So we'll comment that out, those breakpoints. And we're gonna work on adding the breakpoint whenever comment screen is shown. And we do have a threading error here. It's saying that we're updating comments asynchronous thread. Asynchronously, and we need to pretty much, since we're making a UI update using it, we need to update it from the main thread. But let's pause on that first, and let's just jump to the comments just to make sure we're getting the data. So we'll step to the next step, and you see that it did decode properly. the decode properly, and we have all the data that we need. So comment data that we need. So this is looking good. We can stop this, maximize again, remove these comments, remove these breakpoints, and we can remove dumb comments there. And to handle the publishing error from our previous streams, we saw that all we need to do is add a main actor decorator to this, and pretty much that error will go away. I'll run it again so you can see that the error is gone. So click on a different one, and that we don't see any errors here. We don't see any published threading errors here inside our code, so we know that issue. Okay, but we're still showing the same data, so let's update that each one will show data. So the next thing we need to do now is that since let's maximize. Okay, and we can just stop our simulator for now. Since our comments view model here is able to get the comments decoded, let's use side or comments view. Let's jump back to comments view here. And right now, as I said, let's remove this. Yeah, so for each row, we're showing the same thing each time, but we don't want to do that. We want to show it based on the data that we got. So we have to update our list to take that new data that we have, comments. We also comment in. And then we could replace this portion here with saying comment.email. And then I think this was the name or something. Comment.name, yeah. And then for the body, we could just replace comment. All right, now run it again. If we run it again, okay. And if we go tap on one of them, then we tap on the detail view for the screen, you'll see now that we see the comments that this post received by different users. So the first user is this person, Veronica. Then we have Oswald that said some, followed by the other previous people, other rest of the people. I want an easier way to kind of tell the username from the rest of them. So I'll add one more thing too. So I'll tap that, maximize again, and then see if we can add a, say, a background color. Get a color, let's just make it blue. And let's look at our preview so we can just see this as we're doing it, because I think I need some changes. Okay, so we can kind of see it better now. So instead of just doing bottom, do full and see what it does. Undo that. Get rid of this padding. Yo, it's crazy. Like just by putting the modifier here, you see how it kind of changed the UI versus when I had it right below our background modifier. So I'll add that there again just so you can see it. So you see it added the padding outside of the frame of the text when actually I wanted it more so inside. So that's one thing to be aware of with SwiftUI. Sometimes the modifiers can sometimes match our way of replacing them. So the next thing is I don't like how square this is. So I'm just gonna add like a corner radius. And let's just make that 8. And let's reduce the padding here and just make this 5. Okay, so that look a little bit better. But let's run it to actually see how it looks when the full app is running. Okay. First launch it. So it's easier to see that there's a new comment because we can see the user's name, when a new comment is pretty much starting. But when the text is black like this, it looks pretty hard to read. So we're gonna add a tint, and we're gonna make it the tint white. This will work fine in dark mode too, since we already have the white text will be inside a colored background. Let's run it one more time. If it's not tint, then we might have to use foreground color. Yeah, it looks like it's foreground color. Or it could just be where I'm using it. Or can I do it with style too? Let's see. Let's try style before we try foreground color. I know they're deprecating foreground color. Okay, so that works. So using just foreground style, we're able to see it. Nice. All right, so that's working. Nice. So let's see what else. So we need like a way how to the user. So the user can just drag to miss this, but honestly, not every user will grasp that. So our best bet is to probably add like a close button here. So we can do that. Let's stop this real quick. Minimize this and maximize. And all we need to do to add like a button in the top right corner here is pretty much just adding a toolbar item. So this the toolbar item. Toolbar, sorry. The toolbar item. And we'll just make it, I think by default it will just push to the right of the screen. I will say button. The action label. And the action, like it's, oh, it's a common letter, lowercase. All right, so for the label, let's just do an image. We're going to use a system image. And for this, for find the right system image, we can open SF symbols. I can get this from free, just download it. And we want to have like a close button. If this will work fine. Xmark.circle, copy the name, minimize that, maximize back Xcode, pasting in the name of the button that we want to add. Okay, and let's see if we can add a larger format. I feel like that button right there is too small, so we say frame width height, and we'll say 50. Let's see how big that is. So drop it down to 40 instead. And that's okay, but I don't like the color of that. And it's that color really because it's that color because buttons usually just have that color. That's like the default color for buttons. So I think we can set this to plain. Okay. And then I don't want that color exactly, so I'll say foreground style, and I'll make this secondary. It's a more grayer color. I think there's a territory color too, so I kind of like territory more because we don't want the user to first thing to think, oh, close the screen. We want them to stay on the screen as long as possible, and then if needed, yeah, they know they can close it. This button actually doesn't do anything right now, so we need to update the logic so that it does that. So a couple ways how we can do that. We can use an environment object to dismiss the view. We could have passed in show detail view, like show comments view as a parameter for our comments view model. The comments view, not this one, profile section view. And then pretty much this is the parameter we need to change. So we'd have to pass this as a binding for comments view model if we wanted to control it by the view model. And I kind of prefer that way. So what to do that, we would need a, I think, can we use a publish for this? Let's see. Publish var show comments view. Not sure if this way will work. But usually I just use a binding. And I do it in it. Working because I already have one. This logging it just as a regular boolean. So you want a more binding variable. So let's add another parameter. Let's call this show comments view. I don't think binding will work with this like this. Publish might be a little bit different. I will say show comments view equals show comments view. Can't find type binding, and that's because for some reason binding is inside SwiftUI. I hate using SwiftUI inside here though. Oh, so it's a publish. So it's published. Okay. I still need to use it like that. Decided. Alright, let's see if this works. So we're gonna jump back to profile section view and then add the additional parameter we added. And pretty much we're just using the same show sheets view here. We're just passing it over. Say that show sheet view. It's expecting another reason why I should use definitely a view model for this. All right, so I see. So if I'd use a view model for this would have worked because then it would both be a published variable, but because it's a state variable, it's giving us the issue. So what I'm gonna do instead is jump back to comments view, go to the comments view model, and instead of making it published variable, we're just gonna go with binding. Okay. And now if we come back over to comment or profile section view, then to just be able to. Okay. So more and more, we're starting to see why profile section view is gonna need its own view model. But let's continue, and we'll do that in the cleanup stream. So the next thing we're gonna do now is test if this is working, but we need to actually toggle show sheet view inside comments view first. So inside our button now, we're gonna use view model show comments view, and we're gonna toggle that. And then we need to update the parameter here. Now we can just say constant and just make this a true since we pretty much want to see it every time for the preview. Minimize this and then let's run again. And now we're going to check to see is if the close button on the comment screen is working. Click that. Then we get to the comments. Click close. We do see it dismissed. Try a different one. The only issue is that, well, I feel like the close button is too close to the top of the screen. So let's just set. We're adding like a padding top. And I feel like just 5 is okay. I don't think we need the whole 10. The default value is 10. And now let's go back to, it looks a little bit better. But maybe we do need the 10. Get rid of that. Run it again. Tap it. Yeah. So this looks much better. You see enough spacing, padding that you might need right there. Let's close that. Then we'll go back. Then we can just maximize this. Let's stop this. Let's maximize the screen. Close this up so we have more right here. All right. So the comments list screen is pretty much working what we needed exactly, but there's some cleanup that we can do. First off, for each row, we could make this into its own subview. Let's do that. Let's do copy. All right, we could just do Command X, cut that, and then we'll create a new row, new folder, and call this comment row. Comment row. And then we're going to create a new SwiftUI view called comment row view. Right. And then we're going to place back the data that we had from our view. And because we were using a comment, we have to introduce comment to this new view. And this is a type comment. As well as a preview, we have to update that. I really wish the previews would just update automatically, but yeah. So the first parameter one, let's just give it one. Let's call this okay. And now let's jump back to our comments view, and we're gonna replace. We're gonna put back use. We're gonna use that reusable view that we just created. So comment row view, and then we're gonna say comment. And if you run this again, you'll see that it's pretty much the same thing, but it's much easier to read now. If other developers should come in, they'll be able to follow exactly what's happening. They look exactly the same. All right, cool. Run this again. So one thing we're not handling is as say when I go to the screen, it might take some time for the URL for the comments to show up. So we're not showing, like, we need to show like a progress view. Also, there's a case where maybe for that post we might not have any IDs. So let's handle the no comments. For that post we might not have any comments. Let's handle no comment scenario, and then we'll handle the loading scenario. To handle no comment scenario, it will be mad easy. So pretty much what we're going to do is we're going to do an if statement. We're just going to say if the model that comments is empty, or better yet, not empty. We're going to say else. In the case where it's not empty, we'll still show the stuff that we have. If it is empty, we're going to use a content unavailable view. Okay, yeah, we're going to use a content unavailable view. And this is just a simple view that Apple provides where you can just say, just like it'll just have a title and like some description that you can pretty much add, and you can add the image too. So we're going to use this version, which takes a title, a system image, and a description. I'm sorry. And then for the title, we're going to say no comments. And then for the image, let's see what image would be good for this. So we'll jump back to SF symbols. And I don't say anything if you type in comment. Or comment, I'm thinking like a bubble. So let's see if we can find like a bubble. Okay, yeah, this works. Let's do this one, bubble, let's copy it, or maybe caption. Let's just the character, but we haven't used it. And let's paste that there. And then for the description, we'll just say no posts, no comments have been added to this. No comments. Yeah, so we'll basically see this if there are no comments for that post yet. Honestly, because JSONPlaceholder API pretty much has an array of comments for each post, it's not gonna you're not gonna be able to see this issue. So what we're gonna do is kind of force ourselves to see it. So in this scenario, we're saying if comments is not empty, and show this. But we're gonna change it temporarily now to say that if comments is empty, show this, and then if it's not empty, show this. It's twisting the logic, but basically we're just making it that we can see the content on available view. So let's just run it again. And you see it right here. So this is the content unavailable view right here. So you've seen Apple use this a bunch of times too. So it's like a sleek, simple, quick UI you can add in to handle for empty states. So that's working as expected. Let's just stop this, and then we'll add back the correct format. So it's not, so I'll add back this not here. And then just to make sure it's still working, let's run it one more time. And we click on post, notice that we're seeing it again. There's some issue happening here. We're saying attempt to present, and it looks like it's whenever we're trying to present the model. Attempt to present whatever root modifier from navigation presentation. So not sure what's saying that because we're actually using this. So we're gonna actually Google this. What we can here. All right, but before we do that, let's see what we have. So we have each post. We can tap on a post, see all the comments linked to it, dismiss comments. Yeah, and we handle for our empty state as well as a state where we do have the data. The next thing is one, we want to check for handling this warning that keeps coming up. It looks like the issue that it causes is whenever we click on a comment, it dismisses it. When we click on a comment the first time, it will just automatically dismiss the view. And then, but if you click on it again, then it will run fine. So we don't want that to happen, but we look on that and Google it in one more sec. There's one more case that we need to add. There are two more. We want to add a loading spinner. So while we're getting the comments, see a spinner, we're not just it. So the user knows some work is being. And then another case where if we get an error, we want to show error alert. Let's just add in those two last cases, and then after that, we'll look into the warning that we're seeing. So let's maximize this again. And then we'll jump back to comments view. And then for showing the progress view, all we need to do, we did it in our previous stream still, but all we need to do is basically just add a publish property. Say called is loading. Make it a boolean. Set it equal to false. And then what we want to do is change this when is loading is when we first call fetch comments, you want to set is loading to true, because that's when we would want to show the spinner. And then we can use defer to make it that whenever the function finishes, is loading is set back to false. All right, so how we can see this now is we're gonna jump to comments view, and then inside our v stack, we're gonna add an overlay. So we'll say overlay. I'm gonna say if view model is loading, I'm gonna show a progress view. And now what will happen is, as long as this property is loading is true, we will show the progress view, or when it becomes false, we will not show it. So let's just minimize this, and then we're gonna run this simulator again. It might be fast because JSONPlaceholder does return the API pretty fast. So if we click on one of these posts, it doesn't show up yet. So what we need to do is, because the API is so fast, what we're going to need to do instead is pretty much not back to false yet. Side defer. What we're going to do is just not make this change. And then we're going to run it again. And then if we click back on posts that we have here, you see the progress view right here, the spinner right there. And because we're not getting rid of it, that's why it's stuck right there. But what we can do to add some more information, to give it, say, some text. The comments view, progress view. And then we could add a label. So we could do it even more custom. We could say like a V stack. We could say text loading. Just say fetching comments. And then we'll add like a background color, just so we can see it. Let's make it blue. And then let's add a corner radius 5. And let's run this to see how this looks. So we tap on that. If we tap on it again, we do see fetch comments here, but let's add some more padding around. And really we could just make this white. And then let's add some padding around it. So we'll say text comments dot padding. And it's just a 5. And let's rerun it. We see fetch comments here, and we're able to see running. Okay. I want to make the text a bit bigger though, so I'm gonna say font title 3. Run it one more time. Okay, so you see fetching comments here, you see exactly what's happening. All right, so now we can just go back to our view model. We're gonna re-add the defer, which sets back is loading to false once we actually get the data. Run it one more time, I know. And then now you'll notice that once we get the data, the is loading disappears. And it's so fast, the API just returns really fast. That's why you didn't see it. But all right, so next thing now, final thing is to adding an error case. So you might have a case where when trying to fetch the comments, we get an error. So we need to handle for that as well. Error handling. Yeah, so we need to do that. There are a couple ways that we can do it. And I feel like I want for this screen. So usually in my previous screens, so say user detail view model, all I did was add 2 additional properties, a show error alert boolean, as well as a error message string. But what we're going to do instead is try to see if we can use a different way of showing errors. So all right, let me explain how we were doing it first in the screen. So we have a boolean. We have a boolean for showing error alert, and we have an error message. And basically, if we're in the catch block, would update error message, which is a string custom error. Get our custom error message that's readable. So if we jump to user service error, see that it's an enum that conforms to error, and there's extra parameter called error message that is for each case that we have for an error that could occur. We have a readable error message description. So that's one way to do it. And then basically after we update that error message, we toggle show error alert boolean. And then when we jump to the view, inside the alert, you see that we're using that alert is presented, and we're linking it to this boolean, to this binding property here, show error alert. So that's how we're doing it in the previous screens, but here's another way. So we can use localize error. So for each, so to do that, we need to change our error here and make this a localized error. And then localized error, the requirement that it has is that we can add an error description, we can add a failure reason, a recovery suggestion, a help anchor. So it's a bunch of different properties that you can add. So we're just gonna update error description. So we have error message here, but we're gonna add one for error description. So var error description. We're going to use this. So for each case, we're gonna have something similar, pretty much this right here. So really, we could just get rid of this now, but we just have to update all the view model, those places that we were using it. That's the only difference, really. But we can get rid of it. So we'll do that, and then we're gonna get some errors. So let's just run it. At least just try to build. And when we build, the first thing you'll see that it says at our users view model, we're trying to use error message, but we don't have that. What we need to switch to using is error description now. Okay, it's an optional value, so if it does occur, let's just say something went wrong. Then if we build again, we should have one more issue. And again, this is at our user detail view. Okay, that's the error description. And then let's just do something went wrong. Something went wrong. Okay. Now we should be able to build this fine. Okay. So now that we're using a localized error instead of just an error, the benefit of this is that you can now use this differently with SwiftUI. So if we jump to our comments view and this and maximize view, maximize phone. If we jump to our comments view, you'll see that there what we need to do now is add an alert. The alert that we could add is alert. We're going to look for the one that accepts a localized error. This one right here, it takes a binding boolean, a localized error, and just return view. Is there any other one that uses localized error? Here's this as well. Localized action. Okay, let's just go with this one at the top. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna jump to our comments view model. And we need a way to tell it that when to show an error. So I'll say comment C, copy that. And then we're gonna call this property show error alert. And then within show error alert, we're gonna change this inside our error message catch blocker we have here. The show error alert toggle. But before we do that, we need to be able to set the error message. So to set the error message, we could say let custom error. And then within every catch block in Swift, automatically get the error property. So you'll see me using this error property, but I didn't initialize this or create this anywhere. It's just provided in any catch block handle to represent whatever error that might have been caught. So with error now, we cast this to our custom error. Service error, user service error. And then within custom error, say error message, we need to have our error property. What we're gonna do, we have show error alert. Let's jump back to comments view. And we're gonna add the binding property that we just added. So model show error alert. And then for the localized error, just pass that. So that's the custom type that we made. So it would be this right here. So we have to make a property called, and it doesn't need to be a binding. It looks like it just needs some type that conforms to it. So let's say var localized error. Error, service error. Make it optional, and then we'll set it localized error custom. So whenever we can't actually do that, else we will just do localized error is equal to error. Because error is still error conforms to error, and localized error is just conforms to time value. Alright. Type is this. This is an error type. We're passing it for service error. I wonder if I use localized error. Okay, so we can't do it like this. So let's switch this back to user service error, and this we're just gonna hold. And then if we can pass it to that error, we'll do this. And then now if we jump back to our comments view, we're gonna add that localized error type right there. And now action. Let me do an alert here. Let's see. Let me see. Let's just jump to Google real quick to see if this is exactly how Apple handles it. So let's SwiftUI localize error. And then if we jump to error here, see that so we have an case locking error that conforms to localized error, presenting the error, localized error. So he just uses like a alert, not using the localized error type, he's just using content. So I want to see the one where you localize error. So yeah, so we have show error alert. We have a type that is error, and then we just add in some. The first button. All right, so let's try with this. Instead of adding an alert here, let's add a button. And for title, we'll have just say okay. And then for this, we'll just have show error alert just be toggled so that we show that we're dismissing the show error alert. Okay, all right, so now let's just test this. So obviously the service is gonna pass, so we have to force the service to fail. So if we jump to endpoint and just remove or just mess up the endpoint, minimize it and then like for each, so let's tap on the post and see that we do see that error right here. Do see the error, something went wrong, invalid status code error. And we're getting that just from this back. We're getting that just from you our alert like this. Preview is taking up too much space on the screen. Let's just close that and maximize this again. And then you see that, all right, so pretty much you're just taking the data that we have. So we're using alert, we're binding it to error alert property, and we're linking it to a model that localize error. And the actions we have is we just pass in like any type of view. So I guess a button. Then we handle that. So let's just format this. So I'll say A to highlight everything. Come on. Well, let's just move this overlay to the bottom just for like readability. So right now, let's do a complete run. I removed the issue that we were having. So the test that we were doing where we wanted to test to see if comments would fail for that error alert, we removed that and put it back to the correct URL endpoint. So if we run it again, click on any comments, you see that we do see that list of comments. So this is looking pretty good. I think the only issue that we're seeing now is that when we first push to, say, when we go on the navigation stack, click on a comment, a post for the first time to show the comments, we're seeing that first early dismissal. So let's see if we can find what might be causing that. If not, we could switch to just using a navigation link instead. So let's jump to Google, copy the error there, and then we'll type this inside Google, see what it's saying, attempt to present it. I'm working on it probably because okay, let's see what it's saying. It says your dot sheet is inside, which you other view, other sheets. Okay, so it looks like it's because we're using our sheet side or loop. Another person might see right here. He pretty much just moved inside, and inside his code here, he's using it inside his for dot sheet there. And then it says, all right, so my reason was not to, in our case, try to present one sheet after the other one. I don't think that. So let's move sheet from outside of the loop, the list, to being from inside of the loop to being outside of it. So jump back to file section. Yeah, we're definitely using it inside of it. What we're gonna do is this code that we have here. Okay, yeah, move this code that we have here. Pretty much just cut it. And we want to put this on we could put this on our list, or we could on our VStack itself. I feel like let's put this on the VStack. So we're gonna see an error here. All right, so we're seeing this error here because it doesn't know what post is. Because before we were using it inside the list, so we had access to posts. So to handle this, we really need a view model for this. So the last thing we're gonna do is switch to adding a view to profile section, or we could just handle it from here. So we're gonna add like a state, and then say var selected post to be a type of post, and just have it be optional. And then what will happen is whenever we click on any post here, let's maximize this one. Close this, or click on any post, we'll say selected post is equal to post. And then inside our sheet here, we're gonna unwrap that selected post is equal to selected post. And then inside here, inside our if let, And then for post ID, we'll just say selected post, or let's just call this post. Let's call it post. And I don't know, we have moved the sheet view, the sheet modifier from outside of the loop to being outside of the view. Let's see if we're still gonna see these alerts or warnings here. This text code. I'll run it one more time. And now the moment root, click this. And let's click on any of these. And we see that the first time I clicked on it, it doesn't automatically dismiss anymore. We're just seeing it stay. Let's try a different one. Try this one. And we're seeing it behave as expected. So just a quick summary again. What we did was for today, we added a sheet modifier to our profile section view, which is here. Sheet modifier here. And to make it that we can see, we had to add a show sheet view property to our show sheet view property here, and bind it to the is presented so that whenever it toggles, we would see it. And we're keeping track of the selected posts, selected here. We have a post here. By whatever post is selected, we update the selected post, and then once we get that, we've updated that and toggle the sheet, we show then the comments view. And then within the comments view, we have a view model, and we take the post ID from the selected post and make it that we can use that to make the API call. So let's jump to the comments view, and let's just tap this. Minimize the bottom portion here. I think we can just move the top of this. All right, here. So inside the comments view, we are pretty much just building out a list of each comment based on that post. Here, we have a case where we're handling if the comments are empty. If it's empty, it would show our content available view. If it's not, then we show the regular list that you're seeing. So let's move this, because if I click on this again, it's just gonna. And then whenever we get to this screen, the first thing we're doing, we're using a task to make a fetch post view, post request, API request. And whenever we get that data, are dating our self.comments publisher. And because it gets updated and it's a published variable will be used inside an observable object, we will pretty much, this list will now become updated with all the comments for that particular post. Okay. And then we also added in different alerts. So we have an alert where if an error should occur, and we also added a overlay that shows that as we're getting the data, we show some type of progress view. That way the user isn't left in wondering what's happening. And then the other portion here, we just added a toolbar just so that we could show this close button. So the user can also dismiss like this, but to give a more visual idea, so they know immediately how to dismiss, they can click. Okay, so I guess the only other thing I'm thinking right now is that we could update profile section to use a view model instead of using the data like this. That's the last thing we're going to do to add in. So let's jump back to profile section view. So close comments, and we're going to add a new file called profile section model. So click that, Command N. We're going to make this a Swift file, not a SwiftUI file. Profile view model. And then we'll say class profile section view model, make it an observable object. Then pretty much we're just going to take all the properties that we were using inside profile section view and move them to our view model. comment this, copy that. And then we're just gonna paste them here for now. Don't need a binding. And keep this, but we don't need it. The import SwiftUI. And then for state, anything that's a state, since we're using MVVM and we're using observed object, we can just change that to be a published variable instead. Okay. And then init, we'll do this. Don't need, this needs to be a binding still, so we need to update this. So binding what I really should have did is just make it that this actually has a service access as a service dependency. A different way. I don't really need to initialize this. And we're doing that. So just having posts passed in. All right, so let's use profile section view model inside our profile section view. So to do that, we can get rid of all of this stuff right here. All is a state object var view model. Add the type there. And I'll make planes. All you have to do is say view model.post. Then also have to update here. So view model show sheet. Again, view model show sheet view. Then our preview need requires this update too. So say profile section view model requires some posts. We say constant. Make it an array of post. Add some arbitrary data. Call it title. Call it body. Then we also need to update selected post since it's being referred to in now instead of just the view itself, which is way better. And then for selected post, we'll do the same thing here. Basically, every property that we're using directly from the view, we need to just update it that we're using it from the view model. So if we jump to profile section, we jump to user detail view. Where we call profile section, we're going to be seeing an error that it's not requiring just a post anymore. It's requiring a view model. This profile section view model requires a binding post. So it's a view model.post. And then if we run this again, auto run, click this, and we click on each post, we'll see that we still see expected experience. Let's make sure if we click profile section, we see the about section. If we click the about and the profile detail and the user detail view, we see the about section. And if we click back, we still see the posts, and we see all the posts for that user. We can still see the comments. We're not seeing any more warnings also about maximum time. I don't know what this. I think these are fine. And we're basically having this view. So we are able to update profile section view to use a view model and match our entire architecture instead of just using just properties inside our view itself. So if we and let's stop this one more time and then just do our build and say build succeed. Okay, good. So that's it for this, pretty much this stream. We've so for this so let's jump back to JSONPlaceholder API. And you see that we were able to, let's see which ones we've touched. So we've touched the users API already. If you haven't seen that, just check the previous stream. touch Todos. I think this can be linked to you. We could add this in, but we actually have a separate project that we use Todos to create. But we could also integrate it in this. And I guess one way I'm thinking to create it is by adding another tab here and just call this a section and having it show the to do. But that's different now. It's not like a big deal. They also have photos, but again, we have this in a separate project. That's one. And we just worked on comments and we worked on posts. So I'd say for JSON placeholder, we pretty much have touched like each of the endpoints that are available. Yeah, I'll add in the different sections in the video so like you can check to the section that you. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is see if we can add some unit tests for each case that we have here. And then just to make sure that the logic is working as expected. So we'll be testing the view models. So that would be back. So we need to test users view model, user data, the user detail view model, profile section view model. And then we also need to test our service classes itself. So user services. And one way we can test that is by using a URL protocol. So to just give a hint and just start off some prep for this, basically we want to test how will the code handle unexpected data changes from the backend API. So one way how you can do this is we can add a session. Make it that our class requires a session. It will be a URL session. And then in it, we will set our URL session, have a default value of shared. And then for each portion here, instead of using URL session not share, we're going to say session. And then we're just going to change all of these to be session. And then for this one too, we'll set this also session. Now it's pretty much doing the same thing. And if you don't believe me, I'll run it again just so you get the idea. But I'm going to show you how we can use a preview of how we can use URL protocol to test our class. Let me just do some stuff in the app, make sure everything's working as expected. Okay. All right, cool. All right, so let's close this, stop that, and let's maximize. And then what we'll have to do is basically we're gonna make a mock version, a fake version of URL session. That way we can control the response. We can test with like different potential data that we might get from API responses, and like see our code handles that, like how we handle if we have a decoding issue or whatsoever. And to do that, we have to make, say, we pretty much would make a class, say something like class mock URL session, and we'd have to implement this thing called URL protocol. And there are a bunch of different parameters that the properties, functions that it requires. Can init, other one. To see them, let's just click on it. I see it requires, or is it? Yeah, it requires a can init. Would add a can init, a canonical request, start loading, and stop loading. Stop loading is really important. Sometimes I forget to add this, and then I'm like, what's happening with the code? But all those. So the next stream will pretty much be strictly focused on unit testing for this project. If you want to get a refresher, just check the other streams and check it out and see, just to give a refresher. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to try to add the GitHub links to these projects so you can take some time and just follow along in your code as well. Do this. And yeah, so if you like this, just follow, subscribe. Yeah.